Howdy, folks. Welcome back. Um, no views on the other videos. Super pumped about that. Let's see if we can keep that roll going. Anyway, just another thing that was on my mind. Yeah, so anyway, I was listening to CBC Radio the other day, and for those of you who don't live in Canada, it's Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it is a government-run broadcasting service. I think they do a pretty good job most of the time. They do have quite a like a left-wing bent, and yeah, they are fairly focused on stuff like social justice and whatnot. Which, I'm not going to say anything too broad about social justice, except that it's something that needs to really be, you have to look at the specific issues that the social justice argument is being applied to in order to actually figure out which part of it is valid and which isn't. Some of the views can be very extreme, incredibly unproductive, and some of the other ones are actually necessary. Look at the Me Too movement. Peter Nygaard's now in jail, thank fuck. There's been a bunch of those other rich assholes like Roger Ailes and whatnot. All these people have now, so that's been some good byproduct. But then, take that same issue, and you've got some guys who have been accused of stuff that didn't end up happening, and that was proven. And but by the time it all comes out in the wash, you've already pretty much ruined your reputation and career opportunities. That was just a random little side rant there. It's not what I'm here to talk about today, but it does kind of tie in with it. And while I was listening to CBC the other day, there was a show on there, and it's basically about Indigenous people in Canada. And I fully agree with having some representation there. And I'm glad that the CBC is going to the effort to help their voices come out, because at the end of the day, there's some pretty nasty skeletons in Canada's closet. The U.S. is a whole different story, but in Canada's closet in particular, there's a lot of skeletons in the closet about how Indigenous people have been treated in Canada. The 60s scoop where they took kids from their families, and then there was a residential schooling that tied in with that, which basically means, they were institutions where they would take these children away from the parents and this is regardless of the capability of the parents, and they had essentially beat them into submission, and it was just really traumatizing for successive generations of Indigenous people, which I think at least having a radio show there and, a few tax breaks here and there it's a small step toward trying to make it right. But anyway, so I guess that it doesn't really sum up the complete place I stand there. It's an incredibly complex issue, I guess. The danger of it, though, is when people oversimplify these issues. And what I wanted to talk about, what I have been kind of rolling over my head is it's the word settler and the way I heard it used in just a particular part of this conversation. Now, basically, the story behind this was, and it's a couple weeks ago now, so I don't know if I have all the details right, but basically this group of Native Canadians, Indigenous Canadians, wanted to set aside some land for nature. They didn't want it to be developed or anything like that. And what they needed was to fundraise, I think it was like $300,000 or something. And they were hoping to raise that money in 3 to 6 months. And there was a fella from the US who actually just gave them the full amount, and they were able to buy the land right away. And the thing that was said about the guy who gave them the money was the oddest thing. I just found it bizarre to label him like this. And what they said, and you could hear the laughter, like that, the sardonic, laughter when they said it. And it said, they said, the settler who gave us the money. And for those of you who don't know, for anyone in North America, you probably know what the context there is. But basically, because white people from Europe, my lineage, none of my descendants came over then. They've come over since then. But yeah, basically, white people from Europe coming over and taking the land, turning it into farmland, and essentially using military force and lynchings and just really nasty warfare and disease warfare as well to basically push any of the people who were here onto very specific, small, unproductive plots of land. And over time, those plots of land did get smaller and smaller and smaller because like 95% of the native community or population was wiped out because of diseases, because us filthy, disgusting white people had great immune systems because of all the diseases we were exposed to all the time and our fetid living conditions over in Europe. Well, the immune systems of the relatively cleanly Aboriginals and indigenous people weren't, they just weren't up to the task of fighting back those diseases, and absolutely horrible. So you couple that with the war and everything like that, and it basically meant that the settlers coming over here wreaked absolute havoc on their population. So I can understand why there's animosity about that 100%. It makes complete perfect sense to me why there is still resentment about that, especially considering the way that the government has acted since then. And we are only now, over the past decade or so, finally starting to come back and try to rebuild the bridges that have been extensively burned and blown up over the last few hundred years in Canada. Anyway, so yeah, but basically the thing that just kind of I thought was strange was the bitter way, the resentful way that the word settler was used to describe someone who had done such a good thing for this cause. He basically donated this money, did not have to, was under no obligation to, but morally, I guess, he felt that it would be a good idea to donate to this cause. And it made it so they didn't have to spend any more time fundraising. And now any extra funds that they do get, they're able to do more stuff for the community with that. Some of that could be purchasing more land. Some of that could be, helping to build better housing. I don't know, that there's a whole bunch of things they could do with that money. But the bitter and resentful way that the word settler was used, it just absolutely blew my mind. And I basically thought painting this white guy, because that's basically what settler means. It means white guy, right? This white guy donated hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than a guy like me is probably ever going to have in his bank account at any point in his life. And he donated that so you could have your stuff. And then to refer to him as just a settler, a faceless, nameless, oppressive Caucasian man who, if you're looking at what a settler would be in the definition they were using it, someone who's there to rape and pillage, steal, and burn everything to the ground, enslave or kill the local population, and go from there, right? And that, to me, to apply that kind of label to someone who's just done something so kind for you, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, if you want to harbor resentment for white people because of all the bad things that have happened to your people from this group of people, absolutely fine. But if I was to sit there and hate or dislike any group of people for any reason, and I slipped on some ice and fell down on the sidewalk and they helped me back up, I wouldn't sit there and refer to them as a derogatory word, because they've just done something nice for me that they didn't have to do. And in this situation especially, $300,000 it's nothing to shake a stick at. And it just really, really, it didn't surprise me, but it just made me think, this is extremely unproductive. And I know that sounds incredibly arrogant to say, as I am not the face of oppression or anything like that, and I'm sure anyone who ascribes any type of left-wing or social justice-minded philosophy will attest that I don't have the right to say anything about this situation, because I have no right. I don't have those lived experiences that these other people who we put into boxes by their skin color might have. And that it might immediately precludes me from venturing any type of opinion on the subject. But I just cannot shake the feeling that this is just the most unproductive use of language and use of anyone's time that they could possibly have. I am extremely happy that they were able to raise their money, because what it was going toward is a cause that I genuinely believe in. I love the planet. And the planet, well, we need to treat it better for the survival of our species. And for this man to help out with that, but then have him labeled as something which is derogatory, it just absolutely, I can't see why it is anything good at all, or productive or helpful for anything. If you want to call me a settler or something like that, that's absolutely fine, by all means. I do donate to nature causes and stuff, and I guess lately I've been voting more politically left. But it's I'm not doing anything directly for your community. So if you want to use that tone with me, that's absolutely fine. But if someone is going to help you and help your group of people, whichever group of people that might be, whatever skin color they have, whatever creed they follow, whatever religious beliefs they have, then it might pay to give them a little bit more respect, I'm going to say. And yeah, like I said, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to their resentment. And certainly, in the case of the way Indigenous people have been treated in Canada, they are entitled to feel angry. But I guess I'm just saying, maybe pick your spots a little bit more effectively. Hate me. Don't hate that guy. He's trying his best to help. I'm not working against you, but I'm not donating $300,000, mostly because I don't have it. But yeah, that's I guess the thought that I'll leave with. Pick your spots. Not all white people are horrible. Not all white people descended from settlers. And the people who are here now, settlers just isn't an effective label. Because no one here came and drove anyone off their land and started turning it into farmland or anything. And I think the further we get on with this conversation, the better things are going to be. But resorting to these straw men, blinders on, completely unnuanced, overly simplistic views of people based off the color of their skin or where their family may have come from a few generations ago, I don't find it particularly helpful. I guess that's my 2 cents on the matter. I guess we'll see what happens. The internet will probably find this, and then I'll be in big trouble for talking. But anyway, whatever. Until then, have fun, fellas. Ladies too.